A little over a decade before Iron Man was released, Warner Brothers released their own take on a powered suit superhero with Steel. So Steel was one of those Shaq star vessels from the 90s, kind of like Kazam, which came out a year prior, and it's not so much a bad film as a film that feels very direct to video, or dare I say, a TV movie. Steel himself is a spin-off of the Superman character, who is essentially DC's take on Iron Man. Basically, John Henry Irons created a suit of armor with flight boots to fight bad guys. To break it down further, the inspiration is in the name. He's a black man named John Henry with a big hammer, which is obviously a grab from the folk hero John Henry. The Irons part, maybe because he's a ripoff of Iron Man, or it might be because it sounded cool. Probably a mixture of both. Anyway, in the year of our Lord, 1997, Warner Brothers wanted to make a spin-off of Superman, starring the character. Thus, Steel was made. Much like the more famous Marvel counterpart, Steel works in the weapons industry along with his friend, Sparky, who's crippled after our villain, Nathan, turns up his wall-breaking gun to max setting, causing the injury. Meanwhile, Nathan starts to give out the weapons to street gangs as an advertisement to sell the guns to evil warlords and the like. So John and Sparky work on making something to combat the spread of the weapons they created. A suit of armor that's bulletproof and a hammer that shoots lasers, and since this movie's cheap, a motorcycle to get him around with rather than the flying laser boots of the comic book counterpart. I think the big elephant in the room is the acting, which is universally pretty bad in this film.
We don't have the Army's resources.
Yeah, I know, but we have something that they don't have.
Shaq has some charisma that mostly comes from the aura of Shaq, but honestly his performance is stale as old bread, and most every other character is a little too over the top in this film. Judd Nelson is sort of funny, but doesn't give what I would call a good performance. I actually like how Shaq looks in the part. If he could act, he wouldn't be a bad choice for the role, but he acts with the frankness of this being a drug PSA, not an action film. Which kind of matches with this film in a way, I guess, because the majority of this film reeks of cheapness. The sets look thrown together and kind of sitcom-y, and the Steel suit looks rubbery. Truthfully, I think things could be done with the design of the suit to make it seem a lot better with what they have. If they shot it better, had better lighting, and perhaps a more rustic or shiny appearance to mask the cheapness of the suit a bit, I think it could have looked a lot better. As a whole, this film feels like something made in the 80s, not something that came out only a few years before Spider-Man or the original X-Men. The dialogue throughout is pretty cheesy, and nothing really strikes me as particularly well written.
Eat the hot dog. Don't be one. Yes, sir.
There's one scene I found really funny, even though it was really bad. Shaq visits Sparky, who's given up on life after the failure of her legs due to the accident, and she refuses to help Shaq create the super suit to stop the guns from being on the streets. So Shaq just kidnaps her while everyone claps.
Listen, Sparks, sometimes you don't get a choice about things. This here's a prime example of shit happening.
This is the bizarre shit I look for in films like this. The plot is actually really similar to Iron Man when you think about it, with Shaq creating weapons and an evil man he works with exploiting them for profit and power. But where Steel differs is the execution, which is cheap as all shit. Steel is bulletproof, has a big hammer gun, and a motorcycle. That's literally all he has for powers. I think if it was a $50 million production instead of a $15 million production, you got a better cinematographer, get a better director, and you change the lead to someone who can actually act, this film could have actually been pretty big. And the reason I assume this is because 10 years later, essentially the same movie, just done a lot better, got big, that being Iron Man, which launched into the biggest movie franchise of all time. It's kind of crazy to me Warner hasn't considered trying again with this character because the rip-off potential is off the charts. I know this video's been kind of short, but I need to raise one more question. Was Shaq like really bad at free throws or something? There's this running gag where Shaq can't throw a free throw, and at the climax of the film, he literally has to throw a grenade like a basketball to save him and his brother. And it's like a big moment and everyone cheers, and I just don't get it as someone who isn't that much of a basketball fan. Anyways, subscribe to our channel if you're new here. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers, which will be pretty neat to pass. And if you like any of my reviews, follow me on Letterboxd, the link to that being in the description. Thanks again, everybody.